Hey, how's it going? I am going to read you some cards and talk about some stuff. Please look at my signs. So, well, today's been an interesting day. There's some things happening with the Supreme Court in America, the United States of, or actually some things not happening. Because our Supreme Court decided not to make a ruling on a really important case involving the former president who wants to be president again, and it's like, I think the actual, like, the thing that is to be decided is whether or not a president can just be innocent of all charges regardless of anything, and after they're president too, and never be charged. And well, okay, just like while you're president, I'm mixing it up. He was president when he broke the law, so that's what he's being charged for. But I think, like, the decision is about, or it's not the decision point yet, but about whether or not a president can just do anything anytime with no consequences ever, no legal, like, they above the law, like they just are immune to it. Like, it's so stunning I can't even talk. And yet it's not, because it's not the first time he said it. He's kind of Trump, that is who I'm talking about, by the way. He's been saying stuff like that for years. Like, he always blows himself up to, like, ridiculous proportions. So the court, many of whom are extreme right-wing people, like the one that wanted to base modern law on 16th century witch trial law. Really offended by women, this guy. Like, oh my god. And there's others, but they outweigh the liberals on the court, and they all look bad because one of them has gotten busted doing a bunch of stuff which led to everybody else getting looked at. And there's even a couple of the liberal ones that were, like, sort of not averse to accepting certain gifts, and the reporting seemed to make it sound like they all kind of, like, talk about it and decide, like, make decisions on, like, you know, what can they get away with, basically, you know, and not look bad, because they don't have any restrictions against them pretty much in any way. And that's a problem. No oversight. Nobody can step in and say anything. Why did we do such a stupid thing? Like what kind of dreamland were we in? It wasn't even that long ago, but there's, like, preceding centuries of, like, just don't lay the power in somebody's hands, because they just go nuts and everybody ends up suffering. Like, are we ever gonna learn? Oh my god. So, but that's, like, a big deal, Trump, and it's only one of the ones that he's gonna try and take as far as he can and not have to deal with being responsible for things that he's done and talked about having done and talked about getting ready to do. It's like he's a walking crime. He can't stop himself. But they didn't even, like, it's not even that they decided what they were gonna decide on. They just scheduled a date, not even a firm date. Or, like, April 22nd was in there, but the way that I saw it worded was on or about, on or around, or something, like, in the vicinity of. And The problem with that is so many of them were appointed by Trump and are leaning with those guys all in the rightward direction, or I guess it would be rightward, but anyway, they're like, they seem unwilling to prosecute him on anything, and that's a terrible look. But I guess birds of a feather. So it's it's not really, I mean, whatever. So yeah, like, he wants to get away with everything, and they want to push it back until it's in or around the election time, and then they'll find some excuse to not make a decision, and they'll just be wide open that I don't know. So that happened, right? Like, that's real stuff. Like, on this side of the screen, on that side of the screen, it's everywhere. It's like an actual happening. And so I was like, cool. Awesome. When I woke up, or I didn't wake up. I mean, I was awake when it happened, but when I heard about it, I was thrilled, as you can tell. And so I was like, let me take my mind off of that. So I'm looking for something to watch, because I just had kind of finished everything that I had been watching, and I had openings in my schedule. So I go looking, and while I'm on Netflix looking around, something new dropped on there, and I was like, oh, how handy. And it was this show called American Conspiracies, and the episode is The Octopus, and that episode is about, or it's not, it was I'm getting confused with stuff I looked at. The Octopus, I think, is a standalone thing, but it is on Netflix. But it was a 4-episode limited series. Anyway, come on now. It was about this journalist who, it wasn't even his normal field of reporting, and he was kind of like a homebody and a friendly, like, family guy and happy guy, and then he stumbled upon some information that led him to this apparently true, widespread sort of conspiracy amongst like intelligence agencies, but like the kind of above the FBI level, like CIA, but also NSA and NSC and I don't know what else. There was people that were like high level security, what do you call it? When there's a group of committees and things like that, and like heads of those, and just all kinds of, like, IRS, and there was some FBI, but they were pretty much left out of this stuff, I guess, because they're domestic, and I don't know what the dynamic is between those people, but they weren't fully, like, in the loop on a lot of the stuff. And it has to do with a lot of historical events that we know did happen, but we only saw, like, tip of the iceberg news about it. And as this story is about, if you go deeper and find out, like, the real who, what, where's, and why, is like, why did Nixon get pardoned, when he was doing, like, the original version of what Trump is doing now, and why Reagan and the cocaine and Oliver North and Nicaragua, all, like, have sort of really sinister roots and underlying factors that were, like, the real thing that was going on, and, like, everything else I feel like was kind of like a bonus for these people, like, well, I will continue, but it's just bizarre groups of, like, fringe people that are, like, serial killers and and this is just one guy, serial killer, rapist, robber, extortionist, you name it. He was just like jack of all crimes. And the FBI in his case, because he was like helping them with their cases or something, I don't know, it was kind of murky. They were just letting him roam about, and like if he would get picked up and like he wouldn't get all the way to prison, he would just be incarcerated for a very short time, and new information would come in that would not support the case, and so they would have to be dropped, and they just let the guy go. But the thing was, is there's all this real documentation of these like real events, like newspaper stuff, and that's what the journalist was collecting to like learn what he was pursuing. And it's it's just this weird underworld of espionage and crime and arms trafficking and drug trafficking to pay for like CIA ops that they don't want Congress to know about, or that Congress wouldn't pay for. And you know, okay, I don't want to get ahead of myself. So the guy starts finding all this information out, and people start telling him, and some of these are these dangerous, like the serial killer guy wasn't the only dangerous guy. Like all of these guys were like trained, like had been in the military, and the CIA has like their own like paramilitary force, and I think of the other agencies, the letter agencies, also have this. So they're like out in like war zones doing stuff, looking like soldiers and stuff, like, I guess, you know, but they're just like running around, and somehow they have free reign to be running around doing what they're doing. And former politicians know about the stuff, and even if they're retired, they're still like in the know and involved. And it's a very it's a very wicked web. And so many things that came out in this, where like if you know anything about like paranoid government conspiracy theorists, they might have had something like right. And one of the most frightening things had to do with the Kennedys. Well, it's funny because they started talking about the Zapruder film as if there's like 30 of them, but as it turns out, there's more than one version, let's say that. And that was revealed in this documentary, or that was something that was revealed to a reporter who is still alive, and I believe she's still working. I'll include her name in the notes, whatever, information box for this. But all of this stuff that was, I mean, credible sounding, like there's a distrust of the government, and now I have a distrust for the court system, because they're coming off like they're above the law and they're criminals. I'm not gonna say all of them, but like I said, even like the ones on the left were doing some things that I can definitely raise an eyebrow at. Like, what are you doing? So, and well, Clarence Thomas has had the John Oliver spotlight aimed at him, and plus just the regular old like news people finding out about his relationships and his lust for money and luxury, and you know, not telling the truth about like everything, I guess. And so there's a lot of secrets, but you find out that a lot of the secrets are known, which I always suspected. And I also am watching this and am going, everything that people have made a claim that's been called crazy about the government, or made to look crazy, like take UFO people, like do you know about it's not a good idea to report it. And sometimes if the sighting or experience is a big enough event, I don't know how else to describe something like that, but it is a big enough thing that it reverberates out and government entities take notice. So like Men in Black, which I don't even know, okay? I don't even know, but just government people, like the kind of people I'm talking about now, like murky, weird titles or like non-titles, agencies you've never heard of, if you get a name, and maybe they won't even tell you the truth about that. It's just like all of the kind of things that you've heard about that you maybe wonder yourself if you, like, I don't know, as your mind wandered down that alley. But like kind of paranoid stuff, but also stuff that as time has gone on, I at least have found a lot of reason to be skeptical a lot all of the time and not just be so much of a blind patriot. Yes. So, it made me think as I was watching it, like my experience with Q people, which was like 2015, 2016, not that long, but not all of those 2 years, but sort of like in that area. For about, I don't know, 5 or 6 months, I was talking to them pretty hardcore, and they were nothing like the ones that you see on like any broadcast now, pretty much. They were not dumb. They were former government employees. Some of them still were, like contractors or veterans, or the veterans were pretty much not active duty anymore, but others were like government contractors. And so the stuff that they talk about wasn't like wacky insane and it wasn't like illiterate, and like they knew about like the MSM. They weren't just all, I will shut it, what, don't listen to it, it's fake, okay, I won't listen to it at all, la la, and then you don't know anything but what you're being fed. And like, oh my god, so much stuff. Like even MK Ultra comes into this documentary because it's part of this web and it's of connections, and it's just like so crazy. But at the same time, I was like, I can pretty much believe that. And there's been like movies and things that have gone into these areas, either about like real events or like insinuating things like this is not based on a true story like Law and Order says, but then the show comes on and you're all, oh, it was the Michael Jackson one, you know? So it's just nuts. But I just kept thinking of the Q people because they did show a lot of, like, talk about a lot of things and shared a lot of links that had stuff that was along these lines. Like somehow like someone would have like FOIA records of something and it would be linked to something alarming. But the thing that this movie really pointed out, and it's kind of like how the web works, is like when the reporters started looking into it, well, they didn't all get killed, but I guess several did. And that's not the first time I've heard of that in the United States, where a journalist was apparently removed from service by the United States, and that was a West Coast journalist. And I don't remember exactly, I think it was like the cocaine part of this. And then if you've seen Narcos, where the Cali cartel, one of those guys like decides to put their supply in the United States so like the Mexicans can't mess with it, and then they find like a bank where they laundered their money, and everybody was fully aware of like where these guys with the heavy Mexican accents were getting all their money from. That was like just cash, and probably had a lot of coke on it, you know. And one of the things that was interesting when I was like talking to those Q people was that there was something I can't remember now if it was just somebody talking about it or if there was actually some article they had from somewhere. Because a lot of this stuff was like, I don't know. I don't even know if then I knew how to get a hold of the stuff that they were getting. Because like I said, they were like connected. And it was talking about how Warren Buffett made a lot of money from drug trafficking and interaction with the cartel. So the cartel people, it turns out a lot of their leaders totally know like politicians on a personal basis, and like it was crazy. But I don't know, I don't feel like I'm paranoid, but I just notice stuff and I'm like, something's not right about that for like ever. You know, like I could just kind of always smell some kind of rat, even if I didn't know what variety of rodent I was smelling. You know, so I mean, it kind of, I just always think of those key people, because my opinion was sometimes like, even those guys were like kind of wacky. For one thing, the like Trump love, I was like, how can you be so smart and not totally see through this guy? Some of them were actually like sensitives, and like one was a full-on medium, and I was like, how do you not see this? And ended up not hanging out with that group anymore. And I always thought it was going to be over like a Trump argument, because I didn't like make a big deal of it, but I made it clear that I was not a fan. And I even asked one of them, I was like, don't you went to Catholic school too, you don't see any parallel here between idolatry and worshiping the golden ox? And he was like, no, not at all. And I'm like, whoo, man, that is I don't know why I'm using over in my head, because I totally understand, but I don't understand how he doesn't understand, or didn't. And he wasn't even American. This guy was a Scot over in Scotland, but he was still a big fan at the time. This was before he was elected, by the way, all of this. So but like I said, a lot of times the stuff they said, not that I 100% believed everything, but some of it was believable, and some of the stuff they were saying and whatever, like just personally, ideologically, I was like, I do not agree. I don't get it. I don't know, whatever. But like I said, they were a different breed from the ones you will see out in the wild today. But I guess my point about that is, maybe you're not paranoid if you're wondering, because like the weird behavior of our politicians right now, I keep asking just every once in a while, wherever, when I'm thinking about it, I'll just be like, doesn't the way they're acting strike you as weird? Like, why are they doing everything but what they should be doing? Why are the things that they do want to do so crazy and destructive? And this is including like from down to the court, the Supreme Court, to like, like the abortion stuff, and it's so medieval, and we don't care if you have pain, just crank out babies, and some of them will die, but the ones that will live, because they, like, I keep hearing all these different right-wing voices all over the place saying, we need more kids, we need to have more kids. I'm like, well, if we need to have more kids, maybe you all should like get down and get to it. Get out of my life, get out of everybody else's life. Sorry. That is how I feel about it, though. So I mean, it's just like so much of this, it like makes a connection to me, and I don't find a lot of it unbelievable, which is, I don't know, kind of disconcerting, but rewarding in a way, because I feel like, yeah, I knew something was weird. I knew something whacked out was happening. So think about that, though, so just to be clear, I'm gonna link the trailer, but oh shoot, let me make sure I don't, you don't have to throw stuff. Make sure that I write down, fine, I'll just write it here. Link the Octopus trailer, link 8, there, I'll just put 8 arms, sorry, trailer, I can't even read that. Chris, her name was Chris something. And, yeah, I got that written down. So, I'm watching this, and I started to do that thing where I was like, whoa, just slide all the way into the illusion. By which I mean, I could get all scared and freaked out and like, oh my God about it, but I'm not gonna, because the whole, like, this isn't really us thing, like, this is just a thing we're doing with this body that we're momentarily using to live out these karmas, I guess. So, from that point of view, it is really like, wow, this is exciting, kind of like, that is crazy. This is like, this intrigue, this octopus, this web of connections that are kind of like skanky and illegal and dirty and ugly is like watching Narcos, but it's also real life. And Narcos stuff plays into it because everything is connected. And like it's like real, and it's like the best story ever. Like, even like, you might not be into horror or gore or like, just ugly stuff done to humans, like that may be hard for people to look at. But just like television with life, unless it's directly happening to you, you can look away. You may not even be in like direct proximity to these things, so you can manage your intake. You can work the dials on the gain and the volume, and you don't have to be overpowered. Especially, I couldn't have done this 2 years ago, but and it's new. It's like I said, I almost want to slide into getting all scared about it, and going down that whole like worry and kind of misery thing, like, oh, what can I do? What can I change? Oh my God. It'll get taken care of either way. Don't worry about it. So, that in mind, I was thinking about, well, like what I just said, like, is the kind of unicorn way to even get there, to be able to think that, like, to have the idea that, okay, well, it's really not real, like, I'm gonna, like, die or whatever, and, like, that'll be this life, and that's what I did here, and those things are the things that I wanted that life to do within whatever. But the whole, like I'm saying, the whole experience, like, if you don't let it just be, if you let it be like going to a horror movie and then like you get your thrill and it ends however it ends, like you walk away or you don't, that's not that can't even get it out. Like, maybe I could have imagined something like this, but I would have never thought, like, all of those levels, like, oh my God, this is actually real. This is really a thing. And so, this is, I pulled 2 cards from the Shaman's Dream Oracle deck, and this one. And the one I just had in my hand is the number 9 card, Dances on One Foot, Balancing Act. This is almost like that straight and narrow that I was talking about yesterday. It's like, do I tip over into the fear of this insanity that's like, it's kind of, isn't it funny, this illustration, it looks obviously like some sort of, I don't know, rainforest flower situation, but if you look at it, it might be an actual flower, but it doesn't look like anything I've seen. Ow! So, Dances on One Foot, Balancing Act. It's like this weird amalgamation, maybe, of all of the overlapping and connecting lines that make up like that octopus situation, which they even said in this thing that it was not the only situation that's like this, because it just, all of it reaches all over the world. So it was almost, I just had like, it looked like the octopus was like the American clot of activity over here, and each like appendage stretched out to like reach code of other countries' encephalopods, which were also have our tentacles entangled in. Just a mess. So I felt like it's like, maybe it's kind of us if we're like aware of how to maybe ease the anxiety about the situation, like look at it in at least a couple of ways, like yes, it could be all scary, but I could either get all scared by it, or I could just look at it like a movie and enjoy it. You have to retrain your brain, but if you're like teetering back and forth between that, like that's what you might feel like. You might not look like that, but having to like, kind of dip into the fear and maybe like it might get a little difficult. Man, I can't talk today. It might be a little difficult to remove yourself from, and so I don't know, you have to dance like the floor is lava back and forth so you don't fall in. And then the other card I pulled was the number 13 card, Dream Thief, and the subtitle is Refusal of the Call. And it just came to me right now that if you tipped all the way into the fear, your nightmare might look something like this, like part of reality. Like I think there's like an owl or something in there, and there's like bird wings, but look at how they're wrong, like they're backwards. All of this, like it should be flipped. All of this should be, I don't know, but I think we can all agree that is some kind of jumble happening right there. And so like, you're refusing the call of sanity to just look at it like the way I was saying before, like more objectively, so that it's not causing you to lose sleep, or, well, not lose sleep, although that could be a factor if you're scared. Like, you could really get on an obsessive path because everything listens to us, and things have cameras that they don't tell you are there in them, and all kinds of good stuff like that. But that's kind of like the tone of this show. Like, they tell you stuff, it's not necessarily true, and you get all wrapped up in believing it, and it could scare you very badly, and for good reason sometimes. Like, the people that did get killed sorry, I guess you're not supposed to say that on here, but they were kind of like assassinated for being about to talk about this stuff, because it looks bad when your intelligence agency is hijacking drug dealers and stealing their money and their drugs to finance their black ops. And I'm sorry, that is in a show that's right now on Netflix, so I'm quoting that. Please don't ding me. But I mean, I guess the dream thief is your dream got snatched up and that got taken over by this nightmare. So I also had watched this show like last week called Code 8 that was on Netflix. I actually I didn't do anything about it. Never mind. But it has like Robbie Amell and Stephen Amell from I guess Robbie was in a bunch of stuff, but the first time I ever saw him, he was in Arrow, which was Stephen Amell's show. I don't know if it's Amell or Amell, whatever, Amell, I think, but they both have shows now, subsequently, like years later, and Robbie was on like a show. I think it might have been on like Buffy the Vampire or something, which I didn't watch, and he might have been in Supernatural too, but I don't know if I noticed. But he was in a bunch of stuff, and I think a couple of them were CW shows. And so now, Steven has a show called Heels on Stars, I believe. And Robbie has a show called Upload on Amazon Prime. It's one of their originals. And they're both very good. I like them very much. But this other show that I watched was called Code 8. And they're both in that. And one of the things that just cracked me up is that, whoa, come on now. Where'd it go? They resemble each other like a lot, but one's blonde, or, you know, now he's going grayish, but one's blonde and one's dark haired, so that's like, and one's older slightly, but their resemblance is very strong. Like, I'm watching this show the whole time, and it was interesting, and it kept me interested. It has like people with abilities, and they're against like the law, and the law's corrupt, and you know, it's not like a very like original sort of idea, but the way they played it out was interesting. It wasn't like, I enjoyed it, you know. I did say that it's not Heels or Upload, but it was pretty good. So I finished the Octopus show, and I was like, oh man, like, I gotta really, like, I don't know. I actually had to like turn it off a couple of times and go away from it and just like deep breathe or something, or just like distract myself, because it was really the revelations that when you suspect stuff like that of your government, you find out like, oh shoot, I was right. That's bracing. So anyway, Code 8 is the name of this other show, and it's also a Netflix original. And I didn't realize there were two parts until today when I finished watching The Octopus and I came upon part 2. So, you know, like I said, it was kind of the same thing. Like, the government, it was like the lower level of the government was sort of feeding off of the people with powers because everyone was afraid of them, and they were very prejudiced against, like, hit you on the head. But they were able to get like you know, stand around at Home Depot type jobs, or they could do crime stuff, which was one of the Amell actors' characters was like a crime guy. And then the other guy just had a sick mom, but he had to hide his powers. They all kind of had to hide their powers because everybody was flipping out on them like they were aliens. Does anybody remember that show, Alien Nation? That kind of vibe. So, in the second one, like, more of the same. You know, more of the government, like, not letting the people, they were normies, but you didn't see them because it wasn't, you know, they were already separate anyway. So you were always in ability world, ability town, and people are poor. The drug dealer guy has like taken over for like the old people that were on top. Like, he was able to like ease in and get a top spot for himself. So he's like made his own operation, and of course he's like a little Caesar for his little community, and he talks like he's little savior, but he's really not. He's just, using them to get fluid off of to sell to drug addicts, which are both normies and ability people. So and then the police are like getting a take from them, and like both manipulating them and like milking them and hiding it from the higher ups, so they don't know what's going on, and just regular stuff. I was like, this is almost kind of like the same stuff, except they're just outwardly doing the things in this. Kinda. So, I don't know. I was like, wow, that is just, it's kind of in everything that I watch. But, well, Code 8 had a happy ending, so that was nice. But the Octopus, as it was coming to the end, like the guy that made the documentary, he's in it, and his director / cameraman is also in it quite a bit. And the reason why the guy started making the documentary was because I guess he was a friend with a journalist who had gotten murdered, or I guess I guess I wasn't paying close attention there. He came upon the information almost like the journalist did, like just found out about the guy's story, and he started following it, and it kind of turned into a rabbit hole. So then he started to get into dangerous areas because of who he was talking to and what he was looking at, but not as bad. Which, by the way, like, there's so much real stuff in here. It might not be correct, but a lot of it is based on actual information. It's like true stuff. So, but as they point out in here, like, this espionage stuff has layers upon layers, and you don't know what's what and who's telling the truth, and everybody's calling each other crazy and a liar, and that's true. We do know that they don't tell us stuff. They don't tell us all of stuff, or they don't tell us stuff at all. This is not news. No one should be surprised at this. That is why it's so much of a bummer sometimes, because they're kind of rotten and they won't admit it, and this tells you a lot of what you suspected. Where was I going? Because I feel like I just went in a circle. Oh yes. So the guy is like starting to wind it up, but he was documenting, chasing down the information to find out, if he could, like, what the journalist who got taken out was looking at, and he wanted to like try to get to the conclusion once he got sucked in. But he finally got to a point, he was like, okay, I found out what I need to know to finish the journalist's novel, which I didn't mention, but that's something that the guy intended to ultimately do with his reporting. Like, he wasn't necessarily doing it for like the paper he worked for or whatever agency. So he had started it, he was working on it, and then he went to go find something out, and as he had been threatened and told repeatedly, you know a lot, you know too much, you could get yourself killed, stop asking questions, that kind of thing. But he didn't, and so somebody got him, apparently. So this kid comes along, finds out about this guy's story, and decides that he's going to finish the book because it's mostly there. And some of the guy's information got taken because what the story seems to be saying is that it seems like the government is who invited him somewhere that he never came back from, and they did eventually find him. He didn't come back from it alive, I guess I should say, and he had like material that was really like a bunch of stuff that probably they didn't want out with him that was never recovered. But excuse me, there was a ton of research materials for the guy to reference, so he was able to pick up the threads and follow them as far as he could. But he did come to a point where he was like, I'm going to finish this. Like, I'm done with this weird person that I can't get a true beat on. Like, he says one thing, and then the other people he's associated says one thing, and then other places they say something else, both of them. So were they also spies? As they had a bunch of stories, or were they just web spinners? Like one of the interviewees that was a journalist talked about, when they interview people, they'll tell you stuff that has like a nugget of truth, and then they'll, elaborate and fabricate and embroider, and you know what I'm saying? And it makes it hard to determine what is the actual truth. But that was almost everybody they spoke to, because it was like they were in Virginia somewhere. Like, pretty much all of this was based in Virginia, which is very close to Washington. I think they said it was like a half an hour away, Washington, D.C. So a lot of government people, a lot of spooks apparently, and it's very interesting. So the guy is like finishing up, and he's saying, I don't have to do with this guy anymore with his stories that unfortunately a lot of it's true, but like I just don't want to hear it anymore. I just want to finish this project and move on with my life. And it cuts away to the reporter woman, and she says, well, she was like on a parallel path and learning many of the same things as the guy that got, and she got the same warnings, except she decided to heed them and didn't keep going, and she didn't lose interest, but she was just like, I don't want to get killed. I have kids. And they, she did say, they said, it would be a shame if something happened to your family. We know you have kids, like that kind of thing. These are like government people. But she said that some people don't know when to stop, and they just like keep going. Like, and if you stop, you can deprogram yourself. But some people don't stop, and they never get deprogrammed. And I thought, that is good if they let you just walk away, I guess. And so the young guy, as he was saying, I thought it was a good point that you made, because the young guy, as he was saying that he didn't want to talk to this one guy anymore, the guy called, and he's like, oh my God, I have this terrible thing that's happening, and people are dying. And it cuts back to the woman. She says, it's hard for people that can't let go. It sounded like she was describing a drug addict. Like, as soon as they like start to get on the move away from it, somebody calls. So the guy calls, and then it cuts away, and she says that someone will call and like try to drag you back in, and they'll say, oh, it's so dire an emergency, people are dying, and it cuts back to the phone call, and then the guy's like, well, what's going on, man? He's like, people are dying. You have to come, and it's an emergency. So I guess he went, but he did go like extricate himself from it, and it sounded like he finished the book and everything, or maybe he didn't, I don't know, but it did show him having removed himself from it, having fun with his friends, and he talks about like making the choice, which the reporter also talked about, like making the choice to deprogram or to stay in the rabbit hole. He decided to deprogram, and the thing that kept getting me on that point was like, yeah, but all that stuff and you can just walk away. But it is just like thinking of it as, this, like, it doesn't have to be so dire and serious as all that. It's like, yes, this is happening, but, I can also take this timeline over here instead and be happy and just be aware that, like, oh yeah, that over there is like radioactive, stay away, and just reprogram and switch into like a better, happier, if not timeline, then mood, lifestyle. And that is something in the spirituality world that they say a lot, like just change what you're doing. You make a switch, change your mind, change your lane, do something different, and then just keep doing that. And like, okay, the other thing is there, and what happened if things happen, but let them just be in the past and move on. And I thought that was a really, she wasn't saying it all woo-woo or anything, but just like a sensible thing to say. And then it was like, it made me happy to see the guy come to the same conclusion at the end and, pick up his life again, because I guess he spent like maybe 3 or 4 years doing it, and he was 25 when he started, looked a few years younger than that, sounded a few years younger than that, and when you saw that, you were like, oh shoot, that really aged him, that whole experience, and it, sounded scary. So if you have Netflix, check it out. And the thing was I did pull some other cards, and they kind of talk about it, but mainly the gist of what I got from it is like they go through it all and then discover these things, like the original reporter had some money problems, not like he was a gambler or anything, but I guess he had taken out like these loans that all came due at the same time and had a bunch of money that he owed. And because he'd been working on this other thing, I guess he wasn't able to pay for that. So the book was supposed to help with that. He wanted to get an advance. And so he was optimistic, right? But then he gets all into like the rabbit hole and all of these people, and it's like they're so like, for one thing, the whole thing was like very attractive to him. Like he was so enticed by the information. I think just like incredulous, but like, I gotta know more. Like he was a journalist, so he wants to chase stuff down. So he's talking to all these people. They're like government people. They're in charge, but they are manipulative and playing games. And one of them, they even said, was an expert in mind games. And they all work for the Department of Justice, the bad ones in this story. And the thing is another thing that woman reporter said that was kind of very on point was that the thing that made it so hard to get out of is that the story just never ends. It just keeps going on. And then I think eventually the young guy who started picking up where the book left off also came to the conclusion, like, no matter what you do, like, it just never ends. So will there be justice? I feel like eventually, but don't hold your breath, maybe. Like, it kind of looks like she's underwater. Don't hold your breath. Keep smiling. And also, it's like the world of all this underbelly is happening, but on the surface, everything's all, yeah, cool, man. Everything's fine. So, kind of trying to handle that, like, inside of yourself. Like I was saying, like, trying to go happy knowing that it's, like, all freaking scary over here. You just kind of have to, like, come to terms with it. Like, it's good and it's bad. You just gotta learn how to... Are you familiar with adding eggs to hot stuff when you're baking? There's a process called tempering. You have to temper your yolk self so your whatever confection you're making doesn't break. I feel like the reporter and the guy that made the documentary, or the two of them, really, they collaborated. I don't know if they both did the book together, but they did collaborate on the documentary. And so to face these people knowing what they're doing, knowing what they have done, knowing what they've ordered, knowing what they're okay with, knowing what they're a part of, and they're just like talking to you. I mean, not only are you talking to a lion, like a scary beast that can eat you, you have to have the strength of that lion to stand there, like in the face of like all of this information coming at you. They could be like wands, spears, daggers, shivs, you know, like weaponry, stuff that can hurt you. But they, you know, well, they, you know, one didn't make it to complete the end of his objective. One did, but they both faced some scary stuff and were strong in the face of it. And it was all about all of this crazy information. So, I don't know, this card, I just keep getting it and getting it. I don't know. I just feel like, you know, it's just another version of like all of this stuff that you learned that's like true and incisive, kind of, and like cutting. There's a lot of blade work in this in there. But I guess just again, you know, absorbing the information, you have the information, and then you have to like temper your feelings about it in order to continue to exist and make sense. And, you know, really you can get caught up in like the fear and stuff so bad that you just make your situation worse, like almost like you likes it. She almost looks like she's definitely like taking a, like, look at her eyes are completely closed, but she doesn't look like she's laying down. She's at the foot of some stairs. It's like she's taking a deep breath and going, I don't know, like fortifying herself, because she's got all of this crazy information like literally swirling around in her mind. And you just gotta, regardless if you fall into fear or not, you still have the knowledge of it, but regardless, you have to just go on with life. You know, like you have to, if you choose to reprogram, reset your decision and choose light and get out of that world that's so dangerous, well, I mean, it's probably better to just stay out of it, you know? I think they don't, the whole, like, wow, the Supreme Court are not like these superior people that we have built them up to be. Our government is, there have been accusations by some of our enemies who know stuff like like Russia or China, that have made comments about us that if you weren't like astute with sort of the subject, it might have escaped you, but they're like digs at us. And the funny thing about that is, if you care enough to make a dig, it indicates that you have some sort of a feeling there, you know, like maybe an envious or something. So, I don't know, that's interesting. But little boys punch little girls that they like, and little girls, if there's little enough, they're like, what the heck is going on? And then they don't want anything to do with them. And I'm so sorry, but there begins an incel. Thank you and good night.